Hello and welcome to Section 3, Unit 4. I'm Christopher Epling, your Graphic Arts course instructor. We really appreciate you participating in this course and looking forward to today where we're going to be going into our medium section, part 2 of that. Today we're going to be focusing on acrylic. We're going to look at some tips and techniques for acrylic paint, some tips and techniques for oil paint, and then also we're going to touch base on digital, the vast, massive world of digital art. So by now in this course you should already be plugging away, creating your project. You should be right in the middle of putting together what's going to become an amazing final piece very soon. And today's little instructional video is really geared towards helping you understand some tips and techniques using these various mediums that are around you in the classroom. So thanks so much again for participating, and without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's unit. Thanks so much. Okay everyone, we're going to start out with something that we have to address whether you're using oil, acrylic, watercolor, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk for a minute about brushes. Now brushes are your essential tools, and as you can see there's a few laid out here, different widths, sizes, shapes. Some are more rounded, they're thinner. There's names given to each one of these styles of brushes. We're not going to pay too close attention to what the names are for these specific brushes. But each one of these brushes, no matter, let's say if it's a round size 12, that maybe it's a played type of a brush, it's a rounded oval brush at the end, or you have one of these big suckers, which is actually a 30 flat. This is a flat 30 size brush. Those numbers determine the width and style of the tips or the sable or synthetic brush hairs that you have on each brush. Now, let's not get too technical. What I want you to focus on in this course, if you're using a wet medium to apply your medium to your canvas or paper, okay, is that these are your most essential tools. You have to take care of them. That means you clean the brush immediately after stopping using them. Don't lay them to the side and continue painting with another brush. You can keep something with water in it, put water into this, and then you can actually put your brush down onto a sort of a holder. If you don't have this, it doesn't matter. All you really need is soap and water in a cup, and you have it. So you don't need a strainer or anything like this to keep your brushes clean. You just need to remember you need to wash them, okay? So the next thing we're going to be focusing in on is actually talking about how to wash oil. Now oil is a little different than acrylic and other types of brushes. With oil, you have to rinse them thoroughly and a fresh paint thinner and then shake dry. Now I know using oil is really controversial when it comes to students, especially younger students, because paint thinner is poisonous. So I'm not promoting the use of oil for this project, but if you've chosen to use that medium, then you have to take care of your brushes regardless. So that is the tip for that. So be sure, remember, clean your brushes, okay? That's the most important thing when it comes to using a tool for your canvas or paper. The tips determine on what you need. If you need a thin area, I mean this is all common sense, right? If you want something that's a thin area that needs a thin application, you're going to use a thin tip brush, something to a point. Let's say you're wanting to really just apply a thick, heavy paint coating or let's say layer coating of paint. You're going to have to use a thicker, larger brush for that. You don't necessarily need a size 30. You can use something a little smaller. Brushes are important. They're your tool for everything when it comes to wet medium. When it comes to graphic arts, cleaning your brushes, a little bit easier for that one. So let's jump over and check out paper. When I said paper earlier, I may have should have corrected myself right away because we're talking about canvas. Usually with acrylic paint you want to have canvas. Canvas is sturdy, it can hold the thickness of the paint, and it can also hold the moisture and the continual application of layers if that's something that you're choosing to do with your artwork. Now let's give a real brief overview of what we mean by canvas. Most of you already are pretty familiar with the canvas. Canvas is a type of fabric. It's a type of textured paper, layered, and this is actually able to be cut and to size and determine on what size you want your painting to be. You would then cut out, if you were doing this from scratch and building this from the ground up, as most artists do, you would have these slats of wood which you would then apply. There's certain types of techniques for that. I do not understand them, but there are out there on the internet if you're interested. But if you're building your canvas from the ground up, you would cut the wood to size, you would stretch your canvas, meaning you pull it really tight, really taut. You want to be able to have that bounce like a drum, and then you would actually staple it all the way around, right? So this is how you would build a canvas. Now, you don't, thank goodness, have to go that far today. You could go to a store and purchase a canvas. Now, canvas come in different sizes. Sometimes you can buy them in bulk packs like this. So they actually come in a pack of, let's say, 3, and then inside of this, they are all wrapped, and you have these little pegs in the back which actually insert here. And what that does is it actually helps to tighten up the canvas even more. So canvases are really accessible today. It's not something you have to go out and build like, let's say, you did back in the day, which is really helpful. Now, before you can actually start painting, this is a painting of Gandalf the Grey, and as you can see, this is something a student did a while back, and it was I found it and then thought I would use it as a really good example of when we're talking about with acrylic paint. Now, before we started even putting paint on this canvas, the student would have to have used what's called gesso, which is a canvas primer. And here's just a big gallon of it. Now, anytime you want to, let's say, prepare a canvas, you would have to use this as your primer. So what this does is it basically works on any surface, okay? And it's a perfect way to prepare that surface for your painting, okay? You shake it up or stir it, and you just apply it. Sometimes you may want to put 1 or 2 layers and let those layers dry before you actually start painting. Once you've prepared a canvas, then here's a larger canvas that you can kind of check out. Once you've actually prepared that canvas with the gesso, you can start painting. Some canvases come already prepared with gesso on it, which makes it even easier for you to use. But you need to think about the surface before you start. So those using oil or acrylic, think about that. And you can notice this board is pretty thick. The thickness of this board is about 1 inch, okay? Canvas come in different sizes of thickness too. For instance, this one's a little thinner. As you can see, I'll kind of compare them, maybe you can see them. It's a little thinner. That really doesn't matter, the width of the board. The tautness of the canvas does matter, so pay attention to that. And prepare your canvas well, and then start applying whatever medium that you've selected. Oil paints. Now, before you can even consider oil painting, you got to get familiar with what paints are available. You buy cheap, poor quality supplies to make your painting what's going to be more difficult. It's going to be tedious and frustrating. Now, I really stress that. I'm not trying to promote a certain brand. I'm not trying to say you have to spend a lot of money on your paint. But if you buy a really cheap paint, it mixes differently than a really good quality pigment does. And it's going to really cause you stress. The most basic collection of oil paints, you should include various of colors from cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, you even have crimson, blue, titanium white, Mars black. Now, you combine these colors, of course, as we know with our color wheel, to create other colors. This is very important for you to understand that even though you have these colors, you can make an assortment of any color that you want. Now, there's kits available. You can actually buy a kit where you go and have everything available for you to use, and it's already there. You don't have to go out and find the perfect paintbrush or anything else. The kits will give you what you need to start using. Now, we need to talk a little bit about brushes. Now, inside of one of these kits, if we were to open it up, okay, we would find that it comes with a brush. And it comes with 5 colors, plus it comes with Turpenoid. Turpenoid. Now, what is Turpenoid, right? Turpenoid is actually something that we'd use to help blend your colors, okay? Now, oil paint is very thick, and it applies, right out of the tube. It's super thick. Using this will actually help you to thin it out, okay? And, this is something that you could use. If you use really thin oil, it will crack later, so that's something to think about. You also need a palette and maybe something to mix on, such as this, when you're blending, okay? And you need some old rags too, because oil paint can get really messy. I know, as all paints can. But you have to think about this before you start, okay? Another thing to think about is you want to set up your work area. When you're working with stuff to clean your brushes, such as you have some linseed oil, and you also have here some Signaturp, which is, this is a thinner. Now these thinners sometimes are toxic, okay? So you have to be careful. You don't want to actually use oil paint in a really enclosed environment. The fumes will absolutely get to you eventually. Put on old clothes to protect your skin. Oil paint is notorious for being exceedingly difficult to clean off. So make sure that you take precautions to avoid coming into contact with it. If you're using an easel, adjust it to the correct standing or sitting position. Make sure that when you're sitting in such a way that it's comfortable. So all these things matter. You have your idea, now you're getting ready to use your medium. So how does your medium actually going to work and apply to you? Now inside of these kits also, with your paint tubes, you have an eraser and pencil usually, so you should have that. And that's when you start sketching, you apply the oil on top of your underdrawing, your underpainting. Remember, all throughout this course, we talked about your study or your storyboard. That's your sketches, that's your idea, your composition, what you're going to do before you start. But the real meat of this project is putting this paint down on canvas, or putting the pencil to paper, or putting the pen and ink to paper. All this really comes down to that application of building your product. So to build your product well, you have to prepare well, understand the medium, and those sorts of things, okay? Good light source helps a whole lot. Consider your colors for mixing. It's really important that you remember that a paint set, when you work at night, your painting's going to be darker and more richer than it is during the day. It's just how light works with your eye and color, okay? It's really interesting how this applies, but it absolutely matters. Other types of tips maybe for your painting is mixing your paint. Use a color wheel to help you find the colors to mix. The color wheel shows primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. Pure hues and other colors that have not been mixed with either white or black, you can mix primary colors to create those, okay? And to create a tint, add white to your paint. It lightens it up a little bit. And to make a shade, use a little bit of black to it. For a tone, add white to a shade, any color with black added. And tones are most widely used when we represent most of the colors we see every day, earth tone colors and those sorts of things. And if you've never used oil paint before, you should really test it out first. Test how to thin your paint. It takes about 3 days for a layer of paint to dry enough to add a second layer, so you have to be really patient using oil paint. It doesn't blend, or it doesn't dry as fast as acrylic does. Okay, there's other things you could talk about when using oil paint, such as creating a glaze. This is when you use a solution of 1/3 linseed oil, 1/3 turpentine, and 1/3 varnish to create this transparent color. It's amazing, but like I said, this is very basic graphic arts course. We want to get into actually too much of the technique portion of all these different application methods, but you can really play around and find the perfect way that you are willing to use this and create something awesome. Now, before we end on oil, correcting mistakes, you have about 3 days while the paint is wet on the canvas, and you can alter mistakes or remove them completely. But you can do that with a damp rag. But before you decide the painting is complete, take a step back and look at your painting and make sure it is. Save your used paint. Don't waste paint. Only put out enough as you need. Clean your brushes. Always clean your brushes. And remember, you can apply something on top of this, a coat of varnish, that after it dries though, don't do it when it's wet. After the painting dries, add a coat of varnish and it seals it and you're good to go. Oil is probably the most technical of all mediums to use, but the effects you can get from it are stunning and amazing. The first thing I think of when I think of graphic design, I think of digital art. Art is changing so much, and with the advances in technology and all the things that we have access to today, it's hard to imagine that we couldn't take something such as a tablet and create beautiful art with it. And it's been proven that it can happen. So if you've chose to use digital means to create your artwork, this tutorial is going to touch just the top surface of what's available. I want to stress that. What I show you today is not the absolute be-all, end-all means to working with digital, okay? We're also going to be looking at using very minimal expenses to create something digitally, and then moving up from there if you love to do this, you may want to consider purchasing a couple of things that may enhance your experience and actually help you feel as if you're using a medium that's not so foreign or alien in comparison to paper, right, and pencil. So let's look at a couple of things here. So first off, this is a tablet, of course. You can do this from your phone. The larger the screen you have, the better, obviously, because that means you can see more and do more. Now, the first app that I want to show you is a free app. If you go to it, you'll notice this is called if I could see it, penultimate notebooks, right? Now in this, you have to be careful, okay, when you go to actually get an app and use it to create stuff, because you may find that you will go into something to use your finger to draw, and what actually you end up with is going to be something for note taking. Even though it's for note taking, you can do things such as change the size of the tip of your pencil or whatever it is you're using to draw with. This may look amazing, like, yeah, this is exactly what I need. I can change color, I can draw on top of things, I can draw, I can erase. This is great. However, even though you have this wonderful ability to create multiple documents and to do multiple pieces, some things are created for note taking, not for art. So be careful when you're looking at apps that will allow you to do that. One free app that you can use is an app called InkFlow. Now with InkFlow, again, you're in here sketching ideas, right? This is a note-taking device, more so than a drawing device. However, with your notes, with this, you can actually send these to something else. So let's say, for instance, you were to create a sketch of something that you really, really want to use, okay? And this is just me dabbling around. And you have this idea, and you've created this sketch, and you're like, that is something that I want to use. Then what you could do is you could send this to yourself, and you'll be able to use it in another program, okay? But again, note-taking app. So InkFlow and Pentultimate, I can't say the word, both apps that are used mostly for writing, for journaling. Other journaling apps are out there. Of course, there's Bamboo Paper. Bamboo Paper is a little different. You can actually go into this and actually create drawings, sketches, such as I've done here. So this actually turned into a painting. I really like this app a lot. You can connect it to a stylus pen. If you go out and actually get a pen, you can work with that. There's different means that you could use here for tips: pencil, brush, marker. So you can see how the brush works. You could change the color. There's multiple colors. Create your own color with this. One of the things you want to think about doing, though, okay, if you're going to use this particular type of method to create something, you want to be sure and see if there's layers. Now, layers is something that you have the ability to actually go into, and what you could do with it, you can go into it and you can actually work with it sort of like how you would work with it using Photoshop, okay? So layers help you draw underneath other sketches. So this sketch, for instance, let's say we're just going to ink the sketch out. So I'm going to be sketching on top of what I've already drawn. Now with most apps, what this would actually do, this would cause you to not be able to go back and change the blue undertone or remove the blue undertone from what we've done here, okay? And what we want to be able to do, or what you should want to do, is have layers to work under. So you could actually go in and add to things without destroying what you have there, the information that you have. So instead of me going in here and drawing on top of the blue like I have been, and not being able to go back and change the blue, with a program that has layers, I can actually go in and I could start to remove the blue undertone after I've sketched on top of the blue, okay? So that's just an idea that you have. You can actually go in and remove the blue, and what you're left with is just your inking or your black, and it's a handy tool to have. So be sure and check and see if the app that you have is able to do that, okay? If it is able to do that, then you're in good luck. So let's look at another. Now these actually cost a little bit of money. It's actually run by Photoshop, if I could bring it up. So there's Adobe Draw. Now this is a great tool. They'll have layers here at the side, as you can see. So what you could do, you could create a new layer, and let's say I'm working from here now. And what I could do is actually go in, I could grab a particular type of a pencil or a pen. Okay, I change the size of it. I'm going to pick out the color that I want. What I'm trying to do here is actually go in and look and see what color I need in order to mimic that of a pencil, the light blue pencil. So I think I found it here, so we'll test it out. So this way I could go in and I could sketch the basic design of whatever character that I want. And this is what we use with the Marvel method. So I could go in, I play around, right? I have all these means to do it. You can use your finger if you want. You can actually turn this off so that your stylus is the only thing you can use. Now watch what happens. This is the first layer, right? So if I select the second layer, which is on top of that layer, imagine it like, you know, layers on a cake, okay? I go over here now and I actually go in and I pick black. So I'm going to move this all the way down to black. Move my size down. I have this general shape that I'm working from. So then I can go in and actually draw on top of this shape. So I have the ability now to remove the blue that's underneath. Okay, this helps for underpaintings, what we talk about a lot with underpaintings. Now you could go really, really far in detail and actually go as far as to, you know, put the face and sketch it out so you have that ready to ink over. It's up to you on how detailed you'd like to go. But once you have this, you can actually go here, okay, click on this layer and remove it. And what you have left is just the black that you've chose to create. Now you turn it back on again, you can see I use this layer. Now you can actually turn the opacity down on this layer. So see how it looks like it's disappearing, comes back. So let's say you wanted to compare how your lines match up. Tons of useful tools for this particular program digitally. Now it's not, you know, it's up to you on what program you'd like to use. I like Adobe and Photoshop. It's what I use a lot too when I work on, you know, different types of programs. So I'm just going to pull up one of my drawings here. So this is actually me trying to work. It's a little faded maybe, but it's hard to see now. What I like to do is I go in and I mock up things. So I'll say, okay, I could do it in red even to make it really seem like I'm doing something serious here, right? So I'll go in and I'll say this right here needs to be changed. I can make notes to myself, different things. Now this is something I've scanned and actually sent to myself, opened it up in the program, and now I'm using it in this way. You can't really do this with other types of programs. You can have layers and things, but you know they do offer layers in other programs. They offer some of the things that Photoshop offers, except for the ability to now send this an email as a Photoshop file to myself and then open it up in Photoshop and use it at another time. That's something you can't do. I'll pull up a drawing that I worked on. Let's see if I can't pull this up. It may not allow me to because I've actually, there we go, here we go. So this little guy here was done multiple layers using this program for an example. So there's tons of things you could do working with these programs for digital art with a tablet and even your finger. You can use your finger, you can create things, you can use a stylus if you want to purchase something. This is a bamboo stylus, but it doesn't matter. Stylus is a pen that will work for these tablets and stuff. A universal pen is really helpful. Now we're going to look at a step up from this even, which is going to be the Wacom or Wacom tablet. So I'm going to show you now the Wacom tablet, Wacom tablet. People say the word different ways, but what this is a very sophisticated drawing tablet that you could purchase to either take on the go. There's portable ones. There's smaller ones where you just draw from. So there's actually no screen. It's an actual, like, almost like a trackpad. Those are available. This is actually one that's a step down from the larger 27 to 24 inch, which are massive. You can see comparison to my hand how big this one is. This is great for portable. Now, there's 3 apps on here, okay, for drawing. This requires, you know, of course, a Wacom pen, but this particular device comes with an app that actually is called Manga. What is it called again? It is Manga Canvas, right? So this is a layout for different pages of a book. Okay, those of you who are into comics a lot, you can actually go into, let's say, your first page. You pull up your first page. These are this arrangement of panels. Okay, so I can actually move these panels around if I wanted. You could go to frame and you can move these around and do various things. You zoom in to where you want to be. Okay, so you start out, and what you could do using layers, you can sketch where the action's going to take place. So you may have a person here who's looking up, and a person in the background who is saying something. You can add speech balloons, thought balloons, all of these things with this particular device. It's amazing. Now, this is, of course, pretty expensive. This is on loan to me from Kivek. And so, you know, this is something that if you're interested in getting a tablet to draw from, this may be the choice for you, and it may not. But layers is important. Of course, there's many layers that you could choose from with this. So you can see an example that I have here. I've added this layer in between, and then on top of these are my drawing layers. So this is a watercolor I've scanned, and then what I've done is I've actually went in then after that, and I've chose to go ahead and make markups on here. So, you know, you could put your notes to yourself on what you'd like to change in these various things. Okay, you could change the opacity on it so that, you know, you can actually see layers that are underneath it and those sorts of things, which is very, very helpful when it comes to design. And graphic arts is a lot about design. And working digitally is so vast, whether it's from a giant tablet like this where you don't need multiple brushes, you have one pen, you select a ton of brushes, this little device here, or your finger on the tablet on just, you know, a free program, can be any brush you want, any pencil you want, eraser, anything. You can work with acrylic, watercolor, pen and ink, it doesn't matter, graphite, all from this small little device. However, working digitally is totally different than working with paper. That texture, that feel, there's still this glass here that you have to, when you go to apply your medium, that you're working through, and it feels strange sometimes, but it's a wonderful and amazing device that you can, you know, use and use as a medium to enhance your work and grow as an artist. So those of you who like digital, I don't want to discourage you from it. Keep working towards it, build, gather tools as you go, and see what you could create with it. It really is the very cusp of where art is going, at the edge and the forefront of you know, technology and what's happening in the art world. A lot of digital artists out there who are creating stuff. Even if you're not using digital means to create your artwork, you still today have to use programs such as Photoshop and other programs with these layers I've been talking about in order to process your art professionally. So tips about using digital, I would say find a program at first that it's easy to use, that's cheap, something that you could get for free, that you can learn how it works. Be sure and look for layers so you can understand how layers work. Use that program, grow on it, become better at it. Then, once you become familiar with things, go and actually see and save up and maybe get something that will enhance your experience even more so that you can actually start to do planning on pages and all these sorts of things right here from this one device.